Hey, happy 4th of July, savages. All right, so today I have an awesome guest who agreed to come out here because I told him, I was like, hey, you're the topic of Walton County right now, and there's a lot of stuff that wants to be known. So we decided, hey, Chief Aaron, you mind coming over and talking to us for a little bit? And he said, absolutely. So good to see you. Today is actually the 4th of July. So welcome and good morning.
Great to see you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for showing up. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this. We've compiled a bunch of questions. And then at the end, we're going to go over just some law enforcement history, maybe ask you some family stuff. And then at the end, we've got some questions from Road Rage page members. And yeah, for anyone that's tuned in just to hear any juicy gossip, that's going to be towards the end. We're going to go over. I've only seen two allegations out there. One's talking about Osceola. Is that how you pronounce it?
It's Osceola.
Osceola. We're going to talk about Osceola, and we're going to talk about a whistleblower case, which is, I think, from NASA.
Correct.
All right, cool. So let's go ahead and jump into it. I guess just start off and tell us why do we call you Chief? Why everyone I've talked to is Chief Murray, Chief Aaron. So why do we call you Chief?
Currently, I'm a chief of police at a local department.
Okay, cool. And how did you choose law enforcement as a career profession?
Well, it was kind of brought on by a family member. My brother-in-law was in law enforcement. He was an incredibly genuine person. And he said, "Hey, what do you think about being in law enforcement?" And I wasn't too sure about being in law enforcement. So I did some ride alongs with him. And I really enjoyed the way he interacted with the community, how he responded even in stressful situations. He's the type of guy that would give you the shirt off his back. And as time went on after the ride alongs with him, I decided I think I want to be a cop. And at that time, it was required that you get sponsored by someone to get approved to go to the academy. And just so happened that night when I told him I wanted to be a law enforcement officer, he handed me a piece of paper that he had already written on behalf of my character and got me accepted to the police academy.
That's kind of a cool little surprise for you. It's kind of like your gift saying, "Hey, look, I know you." He kind of just knew what you needed to do.
He did.
Hey, right on. So let's go to the next question. And this one's pretty cool. So, what was it like being a sniper protecting a U.S. president?
Well, it was really neat. We had the Secret Service come out and ask us to supplement their units for an Overwatch protection detail. And so we were able to work side by side with them to protect President Obama.
And for sniper, what kind of qualifications would you have to meet in order to be that position?
Well, there's really detailed qualifications just to be accepted out at NASA. Government clearances, experience, education, years of time behind a rifle.
And good eyesight.
Correct.
Very nice. What kind of, well, I won't get into me. That's just something I'd like to know, but I'll ask you that on the side because I'm all about this weapons and stuff. But how do you see yourself transitioning from chief of police at a college campus to a sheriff with hundreds of employees?
Well, regardless of the size of your agency, you lead by example. And as long as you're grounded and have the foundation in your faith and who you are, everything else falls into place.
All right. And there's a good one. So, and if y'all haven't guessed it, I wrote down my questions because my memory is bad. But next question. What does your current boss think about your candidacy? Because if you are elected, he's going to need a new chief.
We spent a lot of time talking about this. He's given me some pointers throughout my time here, which I greatly appreciate, mentoring in times. And after the end of our discussion, he said, "I have no doubt that people asked you to run for office. I think you would make an amazing sheriff, and I support you."
And that's a good Good thing to be told from your current boss, especially when you're asking somebody, hey, look, you're telling them, hey, I got to leave my current position because I want to do something bigger, better. I mean, just a different route, and they give you the support. That's always good to have. Now, we spoke about that boss, but everybody knows there's a real boss when it comes to someone's life, and that's their wife. So, tell us something about your wife and what you most admire about her.
My wife is the most amazing lady on the planet, and I'm not just doing that for extra credit. She's the glue that holds our family together. She's probably the most thoughtful person I've ever met in my life. She is grounded in her faith. He comes first before anything in both of our lives. And I couldn't imagine being around without her.
And she supports you wanting to run for this position.
She does.
Right on. Let's see here. All right. So family. Let's talk about faith. Where are you at in that area?
I'm extremely God fearing man. I go to him for virtually everything. I've been blessed coming to this region, and at my church, we were able to be a part of a really close knit men's group, which has been instrumental in so many areas. But when it comes to decisions in life, I always go to him first.
So this next thing I'm going to ask about is funny. I wrote it as the next question because what we just spoke about and what we're going to talk about are the two things that have started the most conflicts and wars in the world, which is what it's like being a politician. I'm guessing you've never done this type of run for anything before. So what is it like having to be a politician during this candidacy?
I've never been a part of anything like this before in my life. In all of my positions, I've never been absorbed into that kind of environment. And clearly, I've realized that God made me to be a public servant and not a politician. But I'm a forever student, and I know that sometimes you got to step up to the plate when things need to change for the better. And that's why I'm
Absolutely.
doing it.
Yep, absolutely. Uh, I want to talk about NASA. Now, what is the most interesting thing you learned about when you were working at NASA? And I personally want to know, did you see any flying saucers? Did you see any green men? Anything like that?
Well, we're not allowed to talk about that stuff, but no, no green men out there. We heard the stories about the monkeys on the space shuttles and things like that. But coming from a sheriff's office to NASA, it's really, really neat environment to work in. You know, working hand in hand, side by side with federal agencies and protecting the president, protecting federal assets like the space shuttle, overseeing transportation and launching of nuclear materials. We were there during the Mars Curiosity rover launch, which was a really, really neat opportunity. So I was blessed to be a part of it.
And while you were working there, what kind of security clearances did you have?
We were required to have a secret clearance, and that requires in-depth federal background investigations.
Okay. Um, and while you were there, you were in charge of the SWAT team, correct?
Yes.
All right. Were there any wild SWAT situations that happened?
No wild SWAT situations. You know, it's a really unique job. You know, you're the last line of defense protecting, the space shuttle and things like that. So when you're sitting in the door of a Huey and you see the space shuttle launching outside of the door, it's a pretty unique experience. Now, as far as scary situations, have we been a part of some? Yeah, most of them were at, the agencies I worked prior to NASA. You know, we had some really high risk situations that we were involved in.
Yeah, I would figure NASA would be more buttoned up with security than obviously out in your regular sheriff world. Present time, tell us the kind of relationships that you have with your officers who serve on your team now.
Well, we make an extra effort to create an environment that kind of embraces the officers, where they feel like it's a safe space. It's crazy that I read this study years ago from overseas, a big study, and it was the balance between your work and home life and being a parent. And what they found is that the number of hours you work in a day has little to no significance on the quality of parent you are. For example, if Derek went to work 5 hours, 10 hours a day, that has little significance about how good of a dad you are or how good of a mom your wife is to your kids. But what they did find is that everyone that went to a job where they felt berated, hostile, unsafe, they walked around on eggshells, almost 100% of their children suffered from bullying, substance abuse, um, suicide, you name it. And it was directly related to the place that they worked or the environment that they went to work in. So for me in our profession, we don't deal with great stuff, meaning people don't call 911 and say, hey, come on over. It's Derek's birthday. We're going to have some cake. They call so that we can show up and fix problems. And that's very stressful. And you have no control over that as a supervisor. And you really don't have any control over people's home life. And you know as well as I, if you're breathing, you got problems. People have problems.
Yeah, definitely.
So what happens at home is uncontrollable. What happens for their calls at work is kind of uncontrolled. But creating an environment where they feel safe, where they feel like they can be themselves, where they're embraced to be supported is the type of environment we create.
Yeah, and I totally believe you when you say that. Um, Dealing with the job, all these jobs it seems like you've had, you gotta remain physically fit. What is your routine? I mean, uh, I don't know if we're the same age or not, um, but you're definitely more physically fit than I am. What do you do to stay in shape? Do you got a routine that you like to follow?
Well, we do a little bit of everything, and it's my job to stay fit. I don't want to be the last one to show up to a call. I definitely want to be able to help fix the problem. So we weight lift, we do some cross fit training, we do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I've heard. I'm totally gonna butcher it, but they say, what is it? A healthy body creates a healthy mind, something like that.
It does. So we try our best. When you live a busy life, it's difficult at times to keep your nutrition up and exercise. But I also make an effort to work out and do PT with our new cadets. So when we have new cadets that are going through the police academy, it gives me a time to bond with them, break a sweat, and show them that hey, leaders lead by example.
100%. That was a big, not to make it about me, but that was a contributing factor for me when I was getting out of the military. I was a staff sergeant, and they gave me the option to have surgery and be put on a permanent profile or to take the medical retirement. And for being a staff sergeant, I knew I was still going to be in charge of a squad of guys. And I wasn't going to be that guy that told them, hey, you go run that 4 miles and I'll see you when you get back here. That's not the kind of leader that I wanted to be. So I said, fine, I'll take the retirement. So, yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying. Um, Tell us, what do you love most about Walton County? And how long have you been here? Now, for some people, unfortunately, that's going to be the determining factor as to if they want you as our sheriff. And I think that is the sickest thing in the world. Sure, it's nice to support your locals that have been here forever, but you know what? Times change, and if there's someone that's better qualified, my personal opinion is you go with the person that's going to help the area the best, not the person who's been in the area the longest. So let me just ask, what do you love most about Walton County? And that was me on my soapbox, people.
Well, I've been here for 6 years, and we love Walton County. I mean, there's amazing people, amazing beaches, and we love boating. And I can tell you that I'm Walton just as much as anyone else is here. When I leave this area and I go teach somewhere else, or I go do anything anywhere else, I represent Walton County. So I'm as Walton as anyone else.
I hear you. Amen. Yeah, we we both chose to move here. You don't move somewhere unless now if you're in the military or for a job, sure you can move to places you don't want to be at, but I think you want to be here and you want to make it better. So we kind of spoke about this earlier, but aside from being asked to do it, why is Chief Aaron running for the office of sheriff for Walton County? Why are you doing it?
To be honest with you, it's a calling. I have been approached for years and I wasn't sure at first. And we've done a lot of praying and there were a lot of obstacles in the way. A lot of people sharing how fearful they were of the environment that they worked in and things like that. But ultimately, one door after the next started to open up. And I just started to realize, okay, well, those obstacles aren't there anymore. And maybe I need to just walk through this door.
Yep. The next thing we got is how do you think you're going to oversee such a huge budget and personnel? Or I'm sorry, how well do you think you're going to oversee such a huge budget and personnel? And in doing so, what qualifications do you have to do that?
Well, the path I actually took educationally was to get my graduate degree in business administration. A lot of people focus on public administration or criminal justice when they're in this field. But I had somebody steer me a long time ago. They said, ultimately, everywhere you work is a business. And I kind of took that to heart and ran with it. And that's what pointed me in the direction of getting my graduate degree in business administration. But when it comes to budgets, numbers are numbers. It's kind of just moving the decimal. When it comes to our profession, we know what the percentages are. You're going to have 70 to 80% is going to be your personnel. And then you're going to have a certain percentage that's operational budget and training and things like that. So whether it's 10 million, 100,000, you're moving the decibel to accommodate our profession.
All right, right on. And it also, I believe it's noted that, uh, what is this? You're a certified public manager. What does that mean? And how would that certificate add value to it?
Certified Public Manager through Florida State University was a program I signed up for just to pursue and grow educationally. I'm a forever student, but some of the courses that they offer in there were leadership and management and just kind of organizational processes for organization success.
All right, awesome. So what did you learn while studying in police staffing command? And this is where at Northwestern University.
Yeah, that program is a little more geared towards the profession. It's similar to what you would find some people going to the FBI National Academy or the Southern Police Institute. Northwestern University has the Police Staffing Command, and they make their program geared around law enforcement, which focuses on things like budgeting, strategic planning, media relations, and things like that.
Right. Yeah. So that could definitely, I could see how that would come in handy when you're a sheriff, especially with the type of budget that I've seen Walton County Sheriff's Office has. All right. Now, I've heard that Walton County deputies are historically and significantly understaffed. I've also heard that there's a good turnover rate. Um, how do you plan to combat that?
Well, it's an organization's responsibility to not just recruit the best people, but to retain the best people. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to is creating a culture that supports and drives them to be the best that they can be. If you can create a culture that the deputies can thrive in, imagine the services that the community would be provided. Now, you did ask me a question about budgeting, a minute ago, and I have a decent amount of experience in that. But ultimately, just like the filling, empty spaces at the sheriff's office, you have to put the right people in the right places. You have to find, the best CFO. You have to find the best administration and things like that, and then give them all of the resources that they need to be successful.
Right on. And that kind of leads me into the next question is what do you see for the future of Walton law enforcement?
Well, what I've found in my 24 years of law enforcement is there's always little pockets of like issues, little pockets of cancer and things like that in organizations. And when it's not removed, ultimately, you can point to the leadership. They know where the problems are, and not removing them allows them to infect the rest of the organization. But where Walton County would be is creating an environment that they are the standard for law enforcement throughout the United States.
Very good. So your first official campaign event was at the Defuniak Springs Lake Fest. What did you do and learn that day? How many people do you think you met? And tell me how you think that went.
I think it went great. We met a bunch of wonderful people. We had a very busy tent, and we also walked around and got a chance to mingle with some of the people in Defuniak Springs. It was extremely enlightening. There were a lot of people that shared some things that were okay, but many of them shared concerns. So my goal is ultimately the sheriff works for the people. So I reached out to them and said, what do you feel needs to be improved or changed in the county that you would want in your sheriff? So it was awesome, an awesome day there.
All right. Now we're going to get more into the area that not a lot of people see you in, social media. Why do you personally not use social media?
I never really caught on to social media. I know it takes a lot of time. Some people have made it their jobs to be involved in social media. But I'm so busy that my family, my friends, and the work that I have takes so much time that I didn't want to take that away from them.
And I can personally attest that it is a time consumer. Now, what I did ask, I put out that we were having this meeting, this interview. I asked anybody that had any questions to throw them down there. So let's go ahead and get into what a lot of people who have tuned in are wanting to talk about. And it's the allegations floating around. Now, from my point of view, I've only seen one, maybe two pages when this comes up, and I always mess up the pronunciation, but it's Osceola.
Osceola, yes.
Osceola. They're holding up something that looks like either a complaint form or a disciplinary form. And then on the next page, it's got a little narrative on there. And a lady named Maria, she stated that you were booted from Osceola with cause. First off, is that true?
That is not true.
All right. So would you like to tell them what they're showing and tell the other people what they're not showing, which is the outcome of that case?
Yes, I'd been there for years with no issues. I've been in many high risk positions from SWAT, sniper, motorcycles. I've been shot at on my motorcycles, many calls involving gangs, drugs, hostages, barricaded suspects, and bank robberies. At the time of this issue in question, I worked in training and was a range master and instructional staff. I had a second level supervisor that kind of had it out for me. Now, keep in mind, it's an extremely Democrat agency, and I've always been a Republican. Now, we transitioned and moved to another county with my wife, church, and business. I used an unmarked F-250 pickup truck for work to drive to the other counties, which was all within policy for our distance allotted for travel. This supervisor thought I used my vehicle too much for personal purposes, so he launched an investigation. I appealed my case. I was never terminated, never served a day of suspension, never paid a dime back to the agency. In fact, my immediate supervisor approved that travel after my appeal. Now, I did know I was processing or looking to process to work somewhere else. And ultimately, I went back to Osceola and left there in good standing to take my current position.
There's also something that people talk about, a whistleblower case.
Yes,
Would you like to go into that just to go ahead and nip anything in the bud?
absolutely. I'm not a big fan of partial news or fake news. We get enough of that in DC. We don't need that in our hometown. At Space Center, everything was great. We had several years of doing some amazing things, protecting the president, sending rovers to Mars, winning international competitions and things like that. But ultimately, the space program came to an end during my tenure. There was a lot of things going on during that time. And a lot of people ask me, they're like, well, what was that like? And the only thing I could really compare it to up here is like Eglin Air Force Base. There's federal employees, there's a lot of contractors that work there, and all the businesses that thrive because of the workforce. Imagine Eglin disappearing. Imagine within a few years, it just ultimately whittles down and it's gone. Well, at the end of the space program, contracts started changing, and a new contract came in place for security personnel. And contracts have certain agreements with the federal government and things like that. And ultimately, I can't get into all the details of the case
Right.
because I filed a whistleblower suit against them. And I received a settlement and submitted my resignation as a result of that whistleblower case. But I will tell you that the basis of it is because I will never do anything illegal or unethical. And that was the result of it.
All right. That's clear enough for me. Kelly Hyde, I wrote your name down. I did not write down your question. And the way I'm having to record this, I'm sorry. I don't know what it is, but I think it may have been about one of these two things that we just covered. The next thing is individual's profile name Coy Daniel. Do you consider yourself a constitutional sheriff?
I do. I live here, and the police are a part of the community. So my job is to protect our community and to train those that work with me to protect the community. If the federal government or anyone came and unconstitutionally tried to get our community to do something wrong, it is our duty to protect our people.
Heck yeah, and I've kind of figured what constitutional sheriff was. This individual did send me a good Q&A, but I wanted to go into this blind just based off of what the word constitutional and sheriff, and I just pretty much figure that's, hey, abide by the Constitution, protect your people, don't let the federal government abuse that. And the last online question is, it's going to be from a lady named Erica. She asks, will you relinquish the duties of the jail, animal control, and fire back to the county?
Well, I've talked to people in each one of those departments, and my initial response is no. Our commission has their hands full, and they're kind of in a bunch of different directions. And we need to grow and improve on what we have right now.
All right. So that's going to end the questions from the online audience. I've got two more questions for you, and then we'll wrap it up. What ideas do you have to improve the safety of Walton County?
It's a good question. I can tell you one is fixing the 911 system. That has been shared with me throughout the community, and I've actually experienced some issues with that myself personally. So, fixing the 911 system to improve the safety of our community is one. Another is we have just read recently the 10th most dangerous roads in the country. Fixing our traffic issues needs to be a priority. I've actually known someone personally that we lost here out on 98, and we have to fix that. It's not acceptable. But one of the most important things is just changing the culture within the organization. Like we talked about earlier, people need to be able to go to work and not feel afraid, not feel berated, not talked down to. They need to be encouraged and supported. So that way, when they go out and serve the community, they can give them their best.
Yeah, I agree. It kind of leads me into the next question. What ideas do you have to improve the respectful image of Walton County?
They not only have to be respectful to our local community, but throughout our state and the country. And that starts by leading by example. The foundation of many, many organizations is very worldly. And there are times that people will start to throw Jesus and things at that worldly foundation, and it will never work. The foundation of the organization, like the Walton County Sheriff's Office, has to start with Jesus. And as long as you have a foundation of Him, then you will give the best service that anyone could ever ask for in our community.
Well, I can't argue with that, and I dare anyone else to try to argue with that. I have asked all the questions that y'all had the chance to put out on the page. I am so happy you came here and did this,
Thank you.
and definitely cleared up. And hopefully, and everyone is listening, you got to clear up this
Osceola.
Osceola. You got to clear that up, and I know you've been wanting to. And it's a little different whenever you type something or people get to hear the sincerity in your voice. So I'm glad we've got the platform to allow you to do that. For me, it was more important to hear the other questions because I already knew this was,
Well, I'll tell you, even in those two instances that we shared earlier, because I don't want people to have concerns. I don't want people, if you have questions, please ask. That's what we're here for. Being transparent is extremely important, especially in these types of positions. But we ensured that both of supervision at both of those entities supported me and gave me letters of recommendation. One ended being the undersheriff in Osceola, and the other was the chief of police at NASA.
I appreciate you coming out today, and I know the listeners appreciate it. Good luck in your run for Walton County Sheriff. You have my and my family's vote. Absolutely. So, all right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the show. Hope this answered questions. We'll see you on the internet.